Hello everyone and welcome back to the latest episode of the Roker Rapport, episode 28. This finds you listening to us just after, well, we're recording just after the West Ham game. 2-2. It was a point shared. It was an interesting match, to say the least. I mean, I say that wasn't spectacular in the sense that you're on the edge of your seat, but certainly it was two teams. You got a lot of injuries. You've got, for me, the same sort of mentality, the same sort of, the same personality going through the team as far as I'm concerned, and the same sort of fan base. But yeah, so you're joining me. I'm joined by Gav. How you doing, buddy?
I'm all right, mate. I'm all right.
Gav's here. Tom, how are you doing?
Not bad, mate.
Not bad.
Shite result, but not bad.
Shite result could have been worse. And we're also joined by a new gentleman. We're giving our writers a chance at the whip. We've got James Lawson. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, very well, very well. Excited to make the debut.
Excited. It is a very exciting place to be, I must admit. Who knows from here where you'll go? Straight up to stardom. So yeah, we're joined by these lads. Thanks for joining me. As I said, West Ham. So 2-2. We managed to get a point. It wasn't the most exciting of games. Gav, what did you make of it?
I think it was two poor teams, really. I don't think the fact we scored 2 goals reflects any sort of positive change made by Sunderland. It was just, a case of we were playing another poor team. I've watched the goals back actually, just 5 minutes ago, and for both of them, their goalkeeper pretty much gifts us each, which you've got to take what you can. I'm not going to criticise our players for that. It's just the chances were presented and we took them for once actually, which is quite nice. I mean, it was probably a game we should have won because you saw yourselves in Dong's chance when he blazes it over the bar. It's just an absolute sitter. We should have won, really. I don't think West Ham look like a team who are fighting for anything. They kind of know they're safe. They know that they're going nowhere from now. The summer holidays are just around the corner, and nobody seemed to push themselves. Whereas I thought, from our perspective, it was nice to see. Obviously, Wahbi Khazri come back in. I think pretty much every Sunderland fan in the ground today was over the moon to see him. He got a hero's applause every time he took a corner. For God's sake, it was great, to be honest, because we haven't had a lot of cheer recently, and it was kind of like the fans sticking their fingers up at the manager and going, "Yeah, fuck you! You should have picked this guy ages ago, and look what he's doing. He's able to create chances, and that's what we got. He was by far and above the best footballer on the pitch today, which I'm over the moon to see. And it was pleasing seeing the manager's comments after the game too about Khazri, and seeing that he wasn't really comfortable answering questions on it because he knows he's ballsed up really, and it was shown today. But in terms of the overall performance, I thought that we've got to maybe take the positives from it. We got some goals again, and he should be. I didn't realise this until I watched the goals back actually, because obviously, like I say, I was there, but I didn't realise how much of a handful he was for both goals. He backs in to their goalkeeper for Khazri's, which some refs might have gave a foul on the keeper. I'm glad he didn't, because it would have been soft, but I have seen them given. And then for the second goal, it's another. He goes up with the keeper for the header. Keeper totally misjudges it, flies out to Barini, who finishes in the empty net. So it was good to see Anicha be making a handful of himself, and I was kind of worried when I saw him go down, but he got back up and got back on with it. But yeah, I think look, we're all resigned to relegation now. I don't think that there's a Sunderland fan out there who can honestly, hand on heart, say that we're going to stay up. But we've got to, from now. It was a good point made by Tom in the preview actually on the website, that we kind of have to see something which sets up for the championship. A bit like Newcastle did last year when Benitez came in. Although they didn't get the results that they ultimately needed, towards the end of it, they had a bit of hope that something was going to happen the next season. As we've seen, that they're pretty much promoted. And that's what I want to see from now. I just want to see Sunderland putting in the performances. But I think there was maybe the glue which holds the team together was missing today. Very fractured bunch of players. Khazri, when he scored, celebrated as he normally would, but then he runs over at the bench to celebrate with Kone. It's kind of like, well, what's that about? And then obviously Barini sliding in front of the manager makes you think, it's not all rosy in the garden. I think everybody's just waiting for the season to be over now. Most of those on the pitch today won't be here next year, so it's just a case of seeing it out, I guess.
What about you, Tom? What do you make of the whole thing?
The whole season has been disappointing. I don't think anybody can argue that. we talk about a fractured fan base, but I really don't think there's anybody. And I've seen Gav do it on Twitter and in our group chat. He'll say, okay, well, if you're sticking up for boys, tell us one good thing that he's done. And nobody can come back and say, oh, well, he's done this or he's done that. There's been nothing. And I understand this issue of stability. And I understand that David Moyes probably isn't the man to give us this stability. But today just showed how inept he's been at times. You know, and we've asked loads of times in the match previews and the post-match stuff, there's been a lot of talk saying, oh, why isn't Khazri played? And actually, you know, as a blog, we've had a lot of stick from people saying, well, the manager's given a reason, you've just got to trust what he says. And the reason has been that Wahbi Khazri, quite simply, isn't good enough at retaining the ball to be on that pitch. Bollocks to that. He was absolutely fucking class today. Like, there's no other way to put it. Every little piece of attacking impetus we had today came through him. He chased the ball down. It was absolutely superb. There was absolutely nobody on that pitch who played as well as he did. And Gav's right. All of the stuff that's being said about Barini's knee slide in front of Moyes, Khazri running over and hugging Kone, suggests to me that there's been hell on in the changing rooms that I think's been kept from us. I honestly, there can be no other explanation for me other than the players must be in little camps of their own, totally distant from each other. And you look back about, it's not even a year, you look back 10 months ago and the absolute just sheer energy that was emanating from the club. You think about the Chelsea win, which is a similar time to last year. You think about the last game win against Everton. The last home win, against Everton. And you just think, how on earth have we gone from that to being bottom? And, you know, we've been in the bottom of the league for an absolute staggering number of days. So the bottom three at least. And just looking at that team today with Khazri on the pitch, they looked a different bunch of lads. And I'd love to hear Jimmy's thoughts in a second, but I cannot understand in any way, shape or form how we've gone from being an energetic, vibrant club at the end of last season. And yes, Allardyce took some stick before Christmas, as people love to point out, but he got it right. Moyes has been given an ample amount of time to find something that works, and he's waited until we're all but relegated to finally give the chance to the guy who the fans knew could make a difference.
Well, I mean, yes, from what you say and from what we've seen, there's absolutely something rotten going on there. I mean, a lot of people say that there are issues at the club, that the players are divided from the manager, and maybe, well, I mean, certainly that's something we're going to touch on shortly anyway. But Jimmy, what did you make of the match, mate? What about your thoughts?
The match in itself was just a really weird game. There were times where we were absolutely dreadful. There were times where we looked more dangerous than we have at any point in the last 2-3 months. It was a bit all over the place. I agree with Gav. I thought that West Ham, having one of the worst goalkeepers in the league, really helped us out. Goals were gift-wrapped a bit by Darren Randolph. But yeah, weird game. I mean, I remember, because I was doing a report for the website, nothing happened between Collins' goal and a Wahbi Khazri free kick. There was about 25 minutes where West Ham had the ball. We just couldn't pass out from midfield. Gibson and Catmull weren't giving us enough. And you just kind of thought, well, this is it. Nothing's going to happen in this game. Then you had the Jones injury, the Ndong miss, the Barini goal, and it was just absolute madness. But sort of, yeah, Khazri obviously the standout player, by a mile the best player on the field today. And it was just so bittersweet watching him, considering how few chances he's got this season. And yeah, Moyes has definitely got it wrong with Khazri. I mean, I could understand why maybe he was a bit apprehensive to play him at first, but when you look at how much we struggle to create chances, how dependent we are on set piece and crossing to score under such a conservative manager, to then not include our most creative player, our best set piece taker, for the last month we've had must-win games, I think is pretty shocking. I mean, in terms of Moyes, I do think he's done two things well here. I think that the role he's brought in for Anachibi is genuinely innovative, and that was good. No one thought of him as a left winger. He played as a left winger for a month, and lo and behold, all of a sudden we looked dangerous and started winning games. And I also thought we actually defended well for about a month when we switched to three at the back. The reasons that he went away from the three at the back, I think, is pretty shocking. I don't understand why. He changed when we're 2-0 down against Southampton. The second he changed it, we got way worse as a team, and he's never gone back to it. And I just think that's completely baffling. And then other decisions that he's made since then, his general conservatism, the way he's got the transfer market wrong, the bad well outweighs the good. But I wouldn't say he's been completely terrible. But yeah, it's looking pretty grim for us.
Well, I mean, it's interesting you say that, actually. I mean, I admire your generosity towards him, but for me, what you're saying, like, yeah, he has made some good tactical decisions before. I think the trouble there, it lies in the fact that he's made them, and as you say, he's changed it up and he hasn't gone back to it. So the danger and the problem with him lies that even when he has seemingly stumbled across a good idea, it seems to be that he's still edging towards it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe he tweaks too much or something like that. Maybe he's a tweaker or something. What do you reckon, Tom?
I think he does, mate. And the issue I have with him is, and Jimmy brought it up, you know, we going against Liverpool early in January, I believe, and it's 0-0, and we look resolute. There's metal, there's fight, and it's a good performance, you know. And then we go away to Crystal Palace at Selhurst Park, and we absolutely dismantle them 4-0. And to me, that's a cathartic moment. That's a moment whereby you can look at a club or a team and you can say, right, that's something that should change their outlook. And then until today, we hadn't scored since then. So what are you doing to a side that manages to put 4 past a relegation rival, whereby they can't score after that? That 3-5-1-1, I guess you would label it. That was, in my opinion, it was a tactic, and still could be a tactic that suits us. It gives Januzaj or Khazri or whoever's in that 1-1 role just behind Defoe and HB, whoever, it gives them the freedom to attack and to probe the opposition. But at the same time, if it doesn't work, you've got the wing-backs to provide the width. And like Jimmy quite rightly brought up, we spend a lot of time out wide without any real good delivery. The 3-5-1-1 had afforded us the chance of actually working our way into the box. And then if shit hits the fan, we can actually work it wide and just lash crosses in. And it's always nice to have that mixture of availability of options of how you actually try and create chances. Since then, we've played like basically 4-5-1 in all honesty, and we've had zero success from it. And you know, and it just, I don't want to be awful to David Moyes as the manager, because I don't want to be that bloke who's screaming and shouting and effing and blinding. But if lads who just write blogs for fun, and lads who just make podcasts for fun, and go to games and watch games, if they can analyse that game and say it's crying out for Wahbi Khazri, or Fabio Barini needs to be taken out of the team, or we need just something fresh, we need to go back with the 3-5-1-1, whatever it is, if we can see that, how can he not see that if he's the bloke who's being paid millions of pounds a year to see it? That just, I can't get past that.
I know what you mean. It is a confusing one. I mean, there's a degree of armchair punditry going on, isn't there? Because we can sit here and we can say this and this, but as you said before, as we brought up, and it's a big issue, obviously, that, again, as you mentioned, is being kept from us, is what sort of problems there are going on in the dressing room. Because it seems to me like you would, as you say, you'd expect this pedigree manager to recognise these obvious flaws in his strategy and correct them. Do you know what I mean? It's very much a case of putting square pegs in square holes. It seems that way. And we're not even trying to boil it down to we're not saying, it's easy to run a football club. Do you know what I mean? We're not talking about the many myriad layers of things that you have to do on top of pick the squad and tell them what to do. We're talking about specifically that. So yeah, I'm with you there. I find it absolutely mind-boggling.
And you know what as well? I know Gav's got some real interesting points on this, but if we go back to the whole Khazri finally being included in the team, today, it's not a stretch to say he was the best player on the pitch. He was absolutely phenomenal. And it's so funny, like I said, we get some stick from fans with some of the negativity apparently we put out. But it's just mind-boggling for anybody who understands or who has played or who has some hours invested into the game of football. It isn't a real ridiculous statement to say, mix it up in attack. You haven't scored in 7 games. put the lad on who last season really was the spark for you to get to safety, to avoid relegation. It's not a great stretch of the imagination to demand that change. And finally today we see, and like I say in a second, I'll just let Gav take over, but Nick Barnes asks a really good question to David Moyes about Wahbi Khazri after the game. He says, he's just basically asking him about his absence from the squad and how well he's done. And he's very, very, very reluctant to give any answer in any way, shape or form that suggests, sorry lads, I fucked up. He probably should have been given a chance earlier on. And for me, that's unforgivable. As a manager, you should be willing to experiment. And David Moyes' conservatism has effectively relegated this club, in my opinion.
That's a very good point. It's quite a damning one as well. I mean, is it fair? Are we being? I mean, ignoring what? Yes, he's being defensive. Yes, he's in the question. Are we being fair to David Moyes? I mean, we're saying that we've been. Everyone's been saying this. Everyone's been pointing out the obvious to him. Do this, play Khazri, blah blah blah, and he's played him. So at the end of the day, he's played him, and we're still. Yeah, it's not enough, is it? It's too little, too late. It seems to be like even when he seems to have done it, and from all accounts as well, he doesn't want to be seen. He doesn't want any attention drawn to the fact that he hadn't been picking him for so long, even though it was obvious to the entire football world that there was clearly a problem there. Judging from what we're saying about the interview, the brief post-match interview, it's worrying. It's worrying that his defensiveness, you say his conservatism, it's relegating the club, and I agree with that. Very powerful statement that, but it's his defensiveness. I can't tell whether he doesn't want to be caught out as a man, he doesn't want to be caught out like as a person, as a manager. I'm not sure if it's defensiveness, like a leftover bitterness from what's happened the last couple of clubs. I mean, to be fair, he's been on a roller coaster ride of shit, hasn't he? For years now, since he left Everton. It's never been good for David Moyes. Do you know what I mean? It's not going well. I mean, what do you make of it, Gav?
Do you know what it is? For the first time, probably since he became our manager, I felt a little bit sorry for him today. Like I say, my perspective was maybe a little different being there today, but it was the atmosphere in the stadium was pretty toxic. It was like you had maybe a 15% minority of the crowd were clearly just there to get on his case. Very rightly, they pay the ticket money. I have no problem with anybody who does that. I mean, I'm completely against David Moyes, and I can sympathise with what they were doing. I didn't join in, but that was my prerogative, I guess. But I did feel sorry for him to an extent. Just everything tied in. It was like every time he stood up from the dugout, he was being booed to hell. There was one moment when the ball comes over towards him and he takes a touch of it just to knock it back for the throw-in taker, and he, real loud boos. There was a smattering of Moyes out chants at the start of the game, just after the goal even, which kind of threw it from the south stand, and it didn't really make its way around the stadium. I think it was kind of just about the south stand, little bits of the southwest corner, people were joining in. And then as it turned round, there was like people arguing amongst themselves in the crowd, because obviously there'll be people who take exception to that type of thing. My dad's one of them. He really didn't like it. He's not a Moyes fan, completely against David Moyes, but he doesn't see the point in booing during a game.
Yeah.
And I can take that point on, to be honest, because it'll end up affecting the players on the pitch if it becomes a majority of fans who do it.
I suppose it could be ultimately counterproductive in that sense.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of like the whole atmosphere in the ground was built around just giving Moyes as much stick as we could, really. Like I said earlier, Khazri going to take set pieces was getting cheered like he was a returning hero from the war or something. It was like he was the man that we've all been waiting for. He's finally on the pitch. The fans want to let him know that they appreciate him, which is great, really. But it's kind of at the same time sticking the fingers up at the manager. And then obviously with Barini's celebration, I don't know if you've watched it back, but as Barini sprints towards him to slide in front of him, it's clearly aimed at him. I'm guessing because Moyes made some comments about Barini's quality in the midweek talking to the press. He said something around the lines of that Barini's been playing because we have no other choice, and it's got the stage where he's had to drop him because he's not offering us anything in terms of goals or assists. Which, to be fair,
to add to that, there seems to be, and obviously with Barini and Manoni's agent coming out, and then Moyes turning around and saying that was disrespectful and unprofessional. Do you know what I mean? There's obviously something going on there as well.
So when he did that, the camera kind of pans to David Moyes, and he's like looking around himself, fist pumping, like, come on, lads, and it's dead cringeworthy, like watching him, and it was at that moment I was like, I feel a little bit sorry for this guy, like he's just so out of place and so out of depth, it's unbelievable.
He's turning into Alan Partridge, like 100%, like everything he does, Alan Partridge.
It's a struggle to watch the guy even try and do his job, which, to be honest, I don't think he wants to be here. I think ultimately he knows he's got an easy ride here, and it's, a case of, well, it's going to shit, but it's not my fault. The quote after the game, when he said, he was asked about whether the pressure from the fans is getting to him, and he said, I just have to remember me really good Premier League win ratio or something like that. I'm in the top 3 or 4 in the Premier League for win ratio, and I was like, what the fuck does that matter? You've at the end of the day, we're bottom of the Premier League, and it's not about you, it's about the football club. We're told that you're here to rebuild the club, yet everything that comes out your mouth suggests that you just want to palm the blame off on anybody but yourself. Doesn't want to hold his hands up and acknowledge his mistakes, which ultimately is what will get him back into the hearts and minds of the fans. If he comes out, and I wrote something in midweek about this, about Ellis Short, he's another that has to do this. The pair of them need to acknowledge their mistakes and talk to the fans and say, yeah, look, we didn't get this right, we didn't do this right, but ultimately we are going to try and make things better here, and this is what we're going to do about it. But all we get from the club really is David Moyes' press conferences, because the other two don't come out and say anything. And Moyes will come out and just blame everybody but himself for the problems, which is not it's counterproductive. It's not helping anybody. Just blaming the past doesn't help anybody. It's an easy way out as well. I find that Sunderland's mistakes this season, yes, we've got ourselves into a hole which we're going to find difficult to get out of in any league. I think the Championship won't be easy next season, and everybody can acknowledge that. But it's not always just down to what other people have done. We've made so many mistakes this year which could have been avoided, and we could have been playing Premier League football next season. Ultimately, we won't be. I don't think we can, say otherwise. So I just think that Moyes, he would really do himself a big favour if he started acknowledging his mistakes. He had a great chance today to come out and say, yeah, look, hold my hands up. Khazri, fantastic today. The fans really appreciated what he gave to us. I can say that now. And going forward, I'd like to use him more towards the end of the season, see if he can continue this form, because he was brilliant today. If he comes out and says that, or something along those lines, then all of us go, yeah, fair play. Look, you ballsed up and you've admitted it. But he didn't. He came out and brushed it off because he didn't want to talk about it, because he can't stand the fact he's been wrong on something, which is something we've seen since day one he arrived here. And I don't know. I think there's got to be a real change in attitude from everybody involved at the club, and that goes from players, managers, upper management to the owner. They all have to start acknowledging the mistakes, otherwise this goes nowhere. The problems just escalate if we don't.
Yeah, we're pretty screwed. I mean, there's no real obvious route to us getting good again. Somehow we've ended up back trusting the cult of the manager. It feels as if we've gone back to the Martin O'Neill days with a less talented defensive manager. It seems as if we've got a worse version of O'Neill. It feels as if we've gone back to dated practices of trying to sign Premier League proven players and British players when we can't really afford to be that straightforward with how we attract players and buy players. I have no idea why the club would let David Moyes sign players for us again in the summer. I just think he's been a disaster. He's proved himself to be too conservative. I kind of feel as if we were going to get relegated potentially this year regardless of who was manager. I feel as if he was put in a really tough spot with the summer transfer window. It was something we knew wasn't going to play to his strengths, with his Dithering Dave nickname from his Everton, his Manchester United days. And I was willing to accept the bad start to the season. I was willing to accept the injuries played a big factor in us losing form in January. But then this last stretch of 5 or 6 games, starting with the 4-0 loss to Southampton, where we've just been so dull, where he's made such conservative decisions, his inability to make changes and take risks that might have resulted in us beating Burnley and Leicester, it's been pretty grim. I'm not sure how much of the blame for us getting relegated this year deserves to go to Moyes. Maybe 40%, maybe 45%. But it's tough. It was going to be tough whoever was manager, but he's not really done good enough with what he's had to work with.
Well, I mean, that may be true, I suppose. I'm of the opinion now, I've gotten to this point where, I mean, considering all we've been told and all we've seen of David Moyes, particularly the massive statement from the club, or, well, from certainly thereabouts, people in the know, that he's not going anywhere, that this is the plan, we're sticking with Moyes. I'm starting to wonder if there is any point. Like, I completely agree with protest, but I agree that protest, it should only be used if there is an ultimate point to it, and just doing it to show the manager that you don't like him. I mean, it's pretty obvious that he knows that we don't like him. Do you know what I mean? He knows that now. He knew it 6 months ago. I mean, he came in thinking that we wouldn't like him. Do you know what I mean? So he's been on the defensive from the very beginning. He's never really been truly accepted. I mean, it was accepted at first. There was a sort of a clamour to say, oh, well, look, finally we've got this calibre of manager in. But obviously over time, very quickly actually, it sort of deteriorated to the point. I mean, you've still got people in this camp, but it's all about give him time. Do you know what I mean? Give him time. Oh, no one could do this job. Anyone was going to fail. Give him time to rebuild. And that isn't really a statement saying, oh, well, I believe in David Moyes. None of these people are saying, oh, yeah, Moyes is definitely the man. They're just saying, dear God, just give it to anybody. It doesn't matter if it's Moyes or whoever it is, as long as they're stable in the club. But yeah, so that's for me, I don't think that there's any way of really kicking off about him anymore. I've become in a way that I was apathetic towards relegation, I've become certainly resigned to the fact that he's going to be here with us, and now I want to look forward. Do you know what I mean? A part of me is actually going, oh, you know what? This is because it's tiring, isn't it? It's exhausting. The picking fault with everything he does. We know that tactically we aren't expecting a masterclass every game. We know that he's going to do something that's just going to make us want to bash our head off a brick wall. Do you know what I mean? But for me, I'm getting to the point where I want to focus and see what he can do now. Because if we're stuck with him, then that's it, isn't it? That's the end to the conversation. There's no more point arguing about it. We are stuck with him. This is what we're going to do. And as much as we point out everything he does wrong, I don't think it's going to help us. I mean, what do you guys make of that, Gaff? What do you reckon?
Yeah, I do agree. I think I've kind of came round to the idea in the last couple of weeks, like yourself, that it's going nowhere now. He's very safe in his role. We aren't going to achieve anything by demanding he's sacked or anything, because one, it's too late for any manager to come in now and influence the season. So it's kind of like, well, sack him now and then what? Just give it to a coach. I suppose that would work. Maybe look in the summer for a manager. I mean, if I was calling the shots, I think I'd definitely look at that. But it's not going to happen. You know, I think if he was going to be sacked, there've been plenty of opportunities for the club to do it, and they're not going to. They're very much sticking by this man to prove a point. To prove a point that they set the stall out at the start of the season and told us we need to stop being the club that thinks short term. We need to be the club that thinks long term. And ultimately, it didn't matter how this season went. David Moyes was always keeping his job. I think he would have had to come out and done something pretty drastic to even have his job come under threat. We've seen the whole thing with the slap controversy with the female reporter. That was an opportunity for the club to do something that didn't. And on top of that, the poor results. We've had countless opportunities to move this man on, and it's not going to happen. So I've been thinking about it more and more the last week or so about, you know, well, if we go down, we're stuck with him. We're still, you know, regardless of who the manager is, we're still, the same players are still going to leave, and we're still going to have the same holes to fill, which I guess means that now we kind of know our fate, and we know that we're going to drop into the Championship, that we can kind of look forward to it. I've watched some in the Championship enough times. It is nice going to these other places for away days and watching maybe a different group of players than you would usually watch, you know, like maybe lower quality, but there's always that, you get that added, you know, bit of spice with Championship football because the technical quality's not there, but you have to be pretty, you know, well-rounded to be a Championship footballer. So there's a different element to it, which I do look forward to. I didn't want us to go down. and I didn't want it to be like this. But we've got to accept that now. Moyes is the manager. I'm pretty sure they probably know which players are leaving, which means then we can start thinking about who we're going to bring in. And there are good players at that level. There are good players in League One even who would relish the chance to play for Sunderland. Now, I look at that team today playing against a fairly average West Ham team who were there for the taking, much like Burnley were, much like Watford were. And I kind of look at our players now and I think how many of them really appreciate the shirt that they're wearing. And I would say maybe Jordan Pickford does. I think O'Shea's been here long enough to understand what it's like to be a Sunderland player. Cattermole definitely has. Billy Jones, he's a very limited footballer, but I can, I kind of like the guy because he never gives up. But beyond that, I look at the team and I think, how many of them really appreciate, just how fortunate they are, because in my eyes they're the most fortunate footballers in the world. They get to do what I would love to do.
I agree.
So, dropping into the Championship, regardless of the manager, to me represents change, and we've got to just accept it. It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
100%, 100%. And there was some things today that, for me, in the going back to the game itself, there was moments today that were, I don't want to say they were encouraging because it was still a draw. It was still going down. The overall thematic mood, whatever you want to call it, is despondency because we know we're in debt. We know we've got this manager who isn't bold and brash, and we've got an owner who hides in the shadows, and all this shite that has engulfed our club. But today, Wahbi Khazri, for example, was fantastic. For me, and I know Darren Gibson got a lot of stick, but in the right team, with the right players around him in the right roles, he can be an absolutely fantastic player. I honestly do think that. And I think in the Championship, for example, I think he really will be exceptional. You look at our club, you've got Joel Asoro shortlisted for the European Golden Boy Award. Wow, if we can bed him into the team in some way, shape or form next year, we could see something exciting from that. And, if Pickford leaves, there's never been a goalkeeper transferred for more than £30 million, I believe. And I think that was Buffon, back in the day. For me, Pickford's, I don't think he's going to top that, but I think he's going to be relatively close to that. So we've got something positive to take from the fact that Pickford's absolutely phenomenal talent that we've cultivated. So next season, for me, there's a lot of things that we can take heart from. And the performance today, yes, we didn't get the result we wanted. And yes, Jermain Defoe deserves some criticism for his just lack of heart at the minute, in all honesty. But there are moments we can take something from and think that there is a little bit of hope here. And I think John O'Shea should be awarded a new one-year deal. I don't think he's brilliant by any means, but he brought something to the team today, and Denayer really thrives alongside him rather than Kone. I think there's something to be said about that. I think Billy Jones is going to stick around, and Brian Oviedo when he gets back fit. So really, you look at that defence, you've got three good defenders going into that league. You're going to have consistency with Rodwell, with Darren Gibson staying around, and Dong, question marks overhang whether he will stay or not. I was disappointed in him today, personally. I think he slowed a lot of our attacks down. But that's him being utilised in the wrong position, in my opinion. But I think if you keep him, if you keep the likes of Anichebe, you keep the nucleus, the core, the essence, whatever you want to call it, you keep something of a side. And to be honest, they seem like the good lads in the team. And I think, obviously, you can include Lee Cattermole in that as well. But I think they are the kind of blokes who are consummate professionals. Billy Jones and John O'Shea, great examples. And Gav made a great point. He said, Billy Jones isn't blessed with ability, but he'll give you everything. Like he'll wear his heart on his sleeve and he'll leave everything on the pitch. And that's the kind of player you need in the Championship. So for me, keeping those kinds of players is more important than the likes of Jermain Lons and Wahbi Khazri staying at the club. So you go, mate.
Sorry, well, I was going to say that's probably the most optimistic thing we've heard on this show in about 6 months, which is incredible. But also, you made so many points there. I mean, we are unfortunately cursed with a time limit on this show, so I have to kind of keep it running on schedule. Otherwise, it'll all just sound like a big mess. But something very valid that you said there about Gibson. He did get a lot of stick, I found. I think that and I agreed with a lot of people when we were chatting about it, he doesn't get about enough. But although he wasn't moving very much, he was pretty much occupying the centre circle. When he passes the ball, and this is something that we were told about before we got him, that he has an incredible level of accuracy, passing accuracy, and I saw him distribute that ball 3 or 4 times at great distance, at great length, through an accurate pass into Defoe, at each of his feet. Do you know what I mean? And things like that. And I agree with that. I think as long as, similar to what you said about John O'Shea, the idea of him he's not actually a fantastic defender, and he is a little bit long in the tooth now, but in a situation where he doesn't have to be relied upon heavily for everything, then the players like this can thrive, can't they? As long as we can build that sort of, as you say, around the nucleus. The nucleus, which is interesting to point out, a lot of those players that you mentioned were brought in under Moyes' tenure. So the fact that he's brought in a core team that can go into the Championship could be argued as a success of sorts, I suppose. Interestingly, though, now we move on. Mentioning Billy Jones took a nasty spill. It looks from what I could see, it looked like maybe a dislocated shoulder or something like that, maybe, and a concussion as well.
Concussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was concussion.
Right
Moyes spoke about it after the game. He was asked, and he said he thought it was his shoulder, but it turned out that he fell awkwardly, landed on his head, knocked himself out. So.
As you do. But I mean, just another one to add to the list of wounded. We are suffering badly from injuries. Interestingly enough, a crisis which West Ham suffer from, which I think actually helped us a lot today. But regardless of that, our injury list it's been bad for quite some time now. And that, considering we lost Oviedo last game, so we've obviously brought in our remaining right back to replace him at left back, and now our right back's I don't know, is he crocked? Is he going to miss the next game, or is he good? Are we worried about Billy Jones?
I think he's going to be out. You'd think concussion, there's a chance that could be his season over. I don't know, he'll have to obviously get checked. We're probably going down anyway. Not much difference between him and Manquillo. I'd be fine with little Donald Love getting a run out, because he's another one who you'd think next year in the Championship's going to play a lot.
Yeah, Donald Love. Well, obviously we've got to rely on these players. Is Donald Love going to be available then? Why has he just been taking a back seat through Billy Jones's ability and things like that?
I came up with a theory for this the other day, and I'm probably a mile off, but it just seems strange that all of these players who are clearly going to be here next season in the Championship some of them aren't even getting in the matchday squads. I just wonder whether he's keeping them out the firing line, knowing that there's no good in really putting them in this poisonous team at the minute. Knowing that we're down. I mean, Love's one of them. Lyndon Gooch is another. I put the tweet out on obviously Twitter to our readers, just asking for questions for tonight, and a lot of them were actually asking about Lyndon Gooch. Where is he? And I wish I knew the answer, but I'm kind of hoping that it's because David Moyes is keeping them out the firing line in case they're needed for next season, which I believe there will be, because Gooch is a pretty decent player, and we'll probably need him in a variety of positions next year when we're playing sometimes 2-3 times a week. So I came up with this theory that maybe him, Love, Djilabodji even, maybe, I'll say his name very with trepidation, but I kind of wonder whether there's some of those players that he isn't including that aren't being included for a good reason, and it's just to keep them out of the firing line, let them bed in properly, because I think it's fair to say that Djilabodji and Love just weren't ready to play when they did come in. And then maybe in the summer, when we move people on, make them more of a focal point in the team. I hope that's what he's doing, because it would make sense really to start playing these players if they were going to be in his plans for next year, because ultimately, Kone's not going to be here, Denea's not going to be here, so why not play the players that are going to be here next season? But I guess it's difficult trying to second guess David Moyes at the best of times, but kind of concocting the theory that he's, even thinking as forward as this might be a mile off.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, there's nothing we can do about injuries, so we're just going to have to, just hope for the best, really. But talking about, going back to what we were talking about earlier with someone, I can't remember which one of you it was that mentioned, but it's clear to everyone now. Defoe's performance, his performances of late, I think it was you, Gav, mentioned it. I don't know if it's a case of he's just given up. I don't know if it's that he's got, has he got an agenda against Moyes? Has Moyes got an agenda against him? What do you make of it, Tom?
I'm disappointed with Jermain Defoe. Yeah.
Do we think it's because his head's been turned, or is he just not giving shit anymore?
Maybe. I don't want to be too critical because the man has been beyond superb for us. He really has. He's been a shining light for most of the time. To be able to score that many goals with such a poor calibre of teammates surrounding him, you've really got to take your hat off and really applaud the man. But he's not exempt from criticism, unlike some fans may believe. So I think he does need to be criticised, and I totally agree with what you're saying. Either his head's been turned, or he thinks, you know what, fuck it, we're down. Like, there's nothing I can do right now. I could be totally wrong, and I could get an absolute load of stick for this. But just today, there wasn't that energy. I saw one point, probably about the 75th minute, Khazri chases down the West Ham defence, and he's able to get a foot in, and the ball goes out for a throw-in deep in West Ham territory. And I'm thinking to myself, fantastic, well done, Wahbi, but Jermain, you're standing still. Like, I don't understand why you don't have the same heart. And like I say, I don't want to be critical because he's been great for us. He's been beyond that. But I am disappointed with the level of display that he's shown in recent weeks. And I think we're resigned to the fact he's going to leave. There's reports that there's a clause in his contract that he leaves on a free, basically, if we go down. And you can't begrudge him. He wants to play. He wants to stake a claim for the England squad.
Yeah.
But like I say, he is due as much criticism as anybody else, and it was disappointing to watch him today. I didn't see the spring in the step that we normally associate with Jermain Defoe.
I think for a while, really, he's lost his pace. Having Jermain Defoe as your best player, if we were a bit better as a club, we'd probably have to have a real talk about how much you're limited due to the lack of pressing he does. I often think that the deep line central midfielders in the teams we play against get made to look good because Defoe doesn't track them. People like Livermore, even today, Fernandes. Because he doesn't press, it limits what we can do as a team. Now, when he's scoring goals, that's great. He's the difference maker. It's a risk and reward thing. And for the most part, when his teammates are so untalented, it's been worth it. But I'm not sure there's that much difference. I just think he's getting older. He's not getting the service. Maybe he has got fed up with the lack of quality around him, the lack of chances he's getting. And in his defence today, he did lay on 2 or 3 good chances for his teammates. And if we had better quality around him, maybe we're talking about Defoe setting up chances for a change, getting 2 assists and someone getting 3 points. So I wouldn't be too harsh on him because, like you said, he has been an excellent servant. But I do think when you've got a player who can't really run anymore as your main man, it does limit what you do. And maybe if we had brought in a second striker, we could have used him more sparingly. We could have preserved him a bit more. And maybe we wouldn't be judging him as harshly now. But like I said, he's going in the summer. We all know he's going. So that's going to be the real tough one. Who comes in next? And, yeah, where do we go from here?
I found, now you've said that, actually, you've made me think a little bit about what a David Moyes Sunderland team would look like without Jermain Defoe in it. Because I think historically, he doesn't actually play with strikers in his team like Defoe. Defoe's kind of, obviously he's inherited them. So Defoe is a small poacher. He's not going to win your headers or, like you say, press high up the pitch, but he will, poach goals and be in the right place at the right time, which he often is. But I just kind of wonder when we do go down, what kind of striker we will sign as his replacement, because I don't think it'll be somebody like him, if I'm honest. I think it'll be somebody who has a bit more of a well-rounded game to them, I guess. Somebody like a Chris Wood from Leeds or Joshua from Leicester maybe is a cheaper option. Somebody who does score goals but can lead a line. I think that's kind of more the type of striker that David Moyes wants in his team. And, I think it's pretty clear that he's not going to be here next season. To be honest, though, I would love him to be here next season because I think he would score hatfuls in the Championship, even though he will be like 35, 36 by the time we do play down there. Well, Go on, sorry.
Well, yeah, for my bit, with regards to Defoe, a couple of points I've got to make. One, I'll save the more controversial one till last, but it highlights, doesn't it, the thing about Jermain Defoe, the fact that he's a goal poacher, that's what he does. And the reality of Jermain Defoe, and anyone's been able to tell you this about him, like for the last 10, 15 years, he will get called offside more often than he'll score in a game. Even if he scores 5 goals, that means that he's been called offside like 20 times. Do you know what I mean? Because that's how he does. He plays off the shoulder of defenders, and he relies on his stature to get him inside and to literally just, the ball has to be given to him. Do you know what I mean? Like people say, oh, he's done really well there, Jermain Defoe, when he's just managed to keep it at his feet when he's being pressed by a centre-back or 2 centre-backs, because he's so small and he's not actually like physically imposing or anything like that. So he has to be a little bit more technical at his feet, but he's not so technical that he can dribble the ball around them. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes he can twist and do an awesome shot. He's got the accuracy, and the shot power to do it. But yeah, for me, it, as I say, it highlights that we don't have a target man. It highlights that we don't have, that we've got an incomplete set there. So that's the shame about having Jermain Defoe, is that if you partnered him with somebody who was a regular goal scorer, doesn't have to be scoring 15 goals a season, just scores out of every 4 attempts, do you know what I mean? If you had them together, that, and obviously a lot more reliance on quality on the wings and things like that in the midfield. There's a lot of things that we're missing that we'd need, but it's just such a shame for me to have this player and to arguably see him go at a time when we need him the most on a free. As I say, I'm not fussed about not getting any money for him. We'd be bloody stupid to expect it. And this leads me on to my second point, saying that he's a good servant, and as a result, he might not deserve certain criticisms and things like that. People saying, well, no, he should be as open to criticism as anyone else, and that is true, because he's a professional at the end of the day. It doesn't matter, how many goals he scores or how old he is or anything like that. But to an extent, I feel like Jermain Defoe's been a bonus to this club. Do you know what I mean? I feel like we wouldn't have got that sort of striker. In an ideal world, we would have him and someone else, but that hasn't happened in a long time. Do you know what I mean? You're talking about, since we had a striker like this, as far as I'm concerned, the sort of partnership I'm talking about that he could have created if he had the extra half would have been like Quinn Phillips. Do you know what I mean? It would have been iconic. Well, I don't think he should be given no criticism, and I don't think he should be fully criticised. As I say, it's sort of like a luxury to me, do you know what I mean, having a player like him. And if he does go, I wish him all the best. Similar to when Allardyce went to England. As I said at the time, I thought Allardyce was the right manager for us. It's a similar thing for me. I don't think that we get that sort of manager or player usually, typically, do you know what I mean? So seeing him, it's easy come, easy go, isn't it? And it is a real shame that we won't have him in the Championship. I can't see him sticking about for that, no matter how old he is. Do you know what I mean? That's not gonna be his bag. He can definitely earn money staying in the Premier League for another season, so why wouldn't he? And then beyond that, he could go abroad again. So it's not like he's out of options, do you know what I mean? I can't see him sticking around for us.
Yeah, spot on. He's not going to stick around for the Championship. He has been a great servant. I wish him to do well after Sunderland. It would be great if he's at the World Cup next year. He's going. He's clearly been a level above. The only reason we got him is because of the whole Toronto debacle, him missing out on the World Cup, him having a point to prove, coming back to England, having been overlooked for another major tournament. So everything fell nicely for us to get a player of that calibre. The way he's brought into our culture, the emotion he had after scoring in the derby, it's been great having him here. It's annoying that at the moment he doesn't seem to be putting enough of a shift in at a time when we need him, but at the same time, without him, we could have gone down the last 2 seasons. So, yeah, people look back fondly on his time there, and I think that's right. So, yeah, no, I don't really want to say too much negative things about him, because I seem to be in a minority. I didn't even think he was that bad today, so that's just where I stand on it.
I don't think he was that bad, you know what I mean? I think it is just it might even, as I say, we've been lucky to have him as far as I'm concerned, but we're kind of used to it, aren't we? Do you know what I mean? We're used to, give the ball to Defoe and he'll score. And when he doesn't score, then you start looking at, is he actually tracking around? But as you said, his legs, the way he plays, do you know what I mean? I'm not sure that we can expect too much of that. But anyway, well, thanks very much for joining me, guys. And thanks to you, the listeners, for listening. Don't forget you can subscribe to us on the Acast app and on iTunes. So, yeah, this is the Roker Rapport, signing off.